What is up, everybody? Welcome again to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I'm the host and moderator, Cypher here, and today it's just me again. Everybody's been busy, so I'm taking over the show. Going to give it a little bit of time for people to propagate in before I get started, and yeah, we'll just listen to some good lo-fi while we do this. Guess while we wait, I can talk a little bit about my day and what I've been up to. So over the last week or so, as everybody might know, I've been putting together my 24-hour, or rather the Crowdsourced Politics / Crowdsourced Tribune's 24-hour charity stream. So the charity stream is good to go. We do have a ton of people that have agreed to participate. And one of those people is Samantha Banana. Shout out to her. She is going to help me moderate some of the panels and to give me a break and let me participate with some of the names that she actually helped gather around, so I can participate in it and don't have to just be, you know, being coach, being a moderator, and that sort of thing. Should be a great time. We're going to be raising money for some really good charities. Let's see, the charities we're going to be raising money for are, let's see, the charities are a combination of, I can't check them because I'm in trouble. So it's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We are doing that because, as some of you might know, we've actually lost one of our members to suicide. The family has given us permission to talk about it. Sadly, I am sad to say that Art Black did take his own life about 2 weeks ago, two weeks ago or so, and we felt that we were going to put on a charity stream anyways, and we had no idea that he was hurting this badly, and so we thought, hey, let's go ahead and make one of the charities that we raise money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We did a lot of research. They do good work. They help people connect with people in times of crisis, and also help family deal with the fallout of a suicide. So we're going to be raising money for them as one of our charities. The other two charities that we're raising money for are Austin Pets Alive. Austin Pets Alive is a great local charity here to Austin, where I reside, but they do programming nationally to help other states, other cities, to set up their own no-kill kind of shelters and programs. So what they do is they partner with people like the Humane Society or city and local shelters and find people willing to foster pets. They have their own shelters. They raise money and that sort of thing in order to make sure that every single dog that gets dog, cat, or any other kind of pet that might be a stray or gets picked up actually avoids being put to death simply because of no space and needing to control the pet population. Great charity. Like I said, they do help other cities and states set up their own Pets Alive initiatives, and so we're going to be helping raise money for them. And then the third and final charity is the Bob Woodruff Foundation. And the Bob Woodruff Foundation is a veterans charity designed to help veterans that have been victim to IEDs or any other kind of war scenario where they've been injured or what have you, reintegrate into society by providing money, assistance, programs to them and their families in order to help give them everything they need to reintegrate after such an event. And so those are the three charities that we're hoping to raise money for. We're going to be doing the charity stream July 31st through August 1st, 24 hours, 11 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'll be on there the entire time. I'll be tired as shit when it comes to about 3 a.m. in the morning or so, but we're going to do this and we're going to help raise money for these charities. And then whatever money we raise during the 24-hour charity event will be added to the pool, and we're going to keep raising money for those charities throughout the month in order to raise as much money for them as possible. So during the month of August, we'll be having these charities. You'll be able to support them through links that we provide you directly, so the money doesn't have to come to us. You don't have to worry about our group, divvying out the money and making sure everything goes smoothly. It's going to be a direct link. You'll be able to do it directly through a link that we'll give you. And more details of how you can access those links will follow here and probably next week's show, the week before. So yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what I've been working on. Again, Samantha Banana is going to be helping me out, and that's a great help to me. And so we hope that you all will enjoy it. We have three panels planned, two really good long debate panels, one at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and another one at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Both of them going to run about 3 hours or so. We're going to cover a couple of topics, probably 3, maybe 4, depending on time in there, and we're going to have a ton of streamers, political streamers that you all know and love, come onto the stream and debate these issues. So yeah, that is the charity stream, long story short of it. Hey, Small Guy Big Flex, thank you so much for joining. That's awesome. Quibbles over coffee. Yes, we are still on for tonight. Once I get done with the news roundup, if I have time after that, before I have to walk my dog, we can jump in right into that, or we can wait until about 9:30 or so. 10:30 or so Eastern Standard Time for you and I to talk about Israel, like we talked about on Twitter. So yeah, well, without much further ado, let's go ahead and get into the news. We have a lot of stuff to cover today in the news. There's a ton of different things happening, and I'll be reading some of the news stories because I thought some of these were very strange stories, and I feel like I need to read the whole story to convey what exactly it is that's happening, and of course that has to do with COVID. So that's the first topic we're going to get into today, is some updates about COVID-19. So let's go ahead and start that with this story coming out of here from Tennessee, where okay, good, it's pulled up. Let me zoom in for y'all so we can see this pretty well, or better. So Tennessee abandons vaccine outreach to minors, not just COVID-19. If you've happened to catch the news this week, you would know that this is a story that is pretty much shocking a lot of people in Tennessee and throughout the U.S. of where the Tennessee state legislature has put pressure upon the Tennessee Department of Health, and the person that's in charge of the Department of Health got her to resign. We'll get into that too. But also, in order to avoid any potential fallout of where the Tennessee legislature might completely get rid of the funding for for vaccine programs for the Department of Health entirely, they've gone back and they're like, okay, we're not going to reach out to minors directly. Now, one can argue, well, should minors be getting notifications about vaccines? Should there be any of these outreach programs or whatever? Because, minors, right? Maybe it should go to their parents, and that's into the story a little bit. But to threaten the entire budget of the Department of Health because you are going down this weird anti-vaccine, especially around COVID-19 hole, is absurd. And so we're going to kind of read this. All right. The Tennessee Department of Health will halt all adolescent vaccine outreach, not just for coronavirus, but all diseases, amid pressure from Republican state lawmakers, according to an internal report and agency emails obtained by the Tennessean. If the health department must issue any information about vaccines, staff are instructed to strip the agency's logo off the documents. The health department will also stop all COVID-19 vaccine events at school property, despite holding at least one such event this month. The decision to end vaccine outreach and school events come directly from the health commissioner, Dr. Lisa Piercy, the internal report states. Additionally, the health department will take steps to ensure it no longer sends postcards or any other notifications reminding teenagers to get their second dose of the coronavirus vaccine. Postcards will still be sent to adults, and teens will be excluded from the mailing list, so the postcards are not potentially interpreted as solicitation to minors, the report states. These changes to Tennessee's vaccine strategy, detailed in a COVID-19 report distributed to the health department staff on Friday, then reiterated in a mass email on Monday, illustrates how the state's government continues to dial back efforts to vaccinate minors against coronavirus. This state's approach to vaccination will not only lessen efforts to inoculate young people against coronavirus, it will also hamper the capacity to vaccinate adults and protect children from other infectious diseases. Now, this part is important. So as stated up in this, I don't think it's mentioned in this article, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about it a little bit. So as it's mentioned above, they are stopping the use of schools from being centers to give out vaccines. I don't know about y'all, but I live in Texas, and Texas has a huge rural community. There's rural communities throughout the South and Southwest. Actually, there's rural communities everywhere, but there's tend to be a little more rural in the South. And the only place where these vaccines can be given in the manner that can maintain social distancing, mask adherence, and have a centralized hub in some of these rural communities is a school. Generally speaking, the school gymnasium, or maybe outdoors when it's a little warmer like it is now, but not too hot, outdoors on like football fields and things like that. And so if you're stopping the ability to use schools for these things, you have literally nowhere else to give the vaccine that is safe and in a centralized area where they will be able to have the equipment hooked up to keep the vaccines cold and what have you. So this is a huge, huge problem. Like I can't stress this enough. This is very, very, very big problem. All right, let's continue. And these changes will take effect just as the coronavirus pandemic shows new signs of spread in Tennessee. Now, this is true in a lot of places. Mississippi is having a huge run-up of COVID. Basically, any area that has had very low vaccination rates, sub 50%, sub 40% vaccination rates, are seeing a huge uptick in Delta virus spreading throughout the entire community. Now, with the Delta virus and the Delta plus variant, you're seeing kids get infected more as well. And we'll get into that a little later in this section of the program. After months of declining infections, the average number of new cases per day has more than doubled in the past 2 weeks, from 177 to 418. Another reason that this is important to say, so it doesn't seem like it's very much, right? 177 to 418 seems like, it's whatever, right? But it has to be stated that throughout the entire pandemic, anytime there's been like a dip in the numbers and a spike in the numbers, there is a 6-week lag. Why is it a 6-week lag? Because it takes approximately 2 weeks for anybody it takes 2 weeks to be in the system and get spread out. And then it takes another 2 weeks for that number to cascade on. So you have a 2-week delay from anybody testing because nobody's going to test unless they're like, oh, maybe it's spreading throughout the community. So you have a 6-week delay anytime there's been an increase of where the numbers actually might be. So if you're seeing this double in the past 2 weeks, then you know we're like at least 2, maybe 4 weeks behind another large increase. And this is true in areas. Let me. I can't stress this enough. This is true only in areas where there has been not that many vaccinations. Areas that have had high vaccination intake are seeing a reduction of COVID spread anywhere between 60 and 80%. And the reason the 60-80% is because you can still get COVID, a very mild case of COVID, if you've been vaccinated. And then you could still potentially spread it on to other people because you're infected. So there's not like a lot of breakthrough with the COVID vaccine, but there is still some spread and people are still getting some sickness. All right, I'm going to continue. The average test positivity rate has jumped from 2.2% to 5.4% in the same time period. The state is also detecting a growing number of infections from the Delta variant, a more transmissible form of the coronavirus, sparking outbreaks among unvaccinated populations in Arkansas and Missouri. Tennessee's count of known Delta variant cases rose from 27 on June 24th to 125 as of last Thursday. Last Thursday being the 8th. The true count is likely much higher because testing of the variant is performed sparingly. The changes to Tennessee's vaccination strategy will impact the majority of the volunteer state, which lags behind most of the nation in the race to immunity. Only 38% of Tennesseans are fully vaccinated, and at the current pace, the state won't reach 50% vaccination until next March, according to health department estimates. The agency holds responsibility for public health in 89 of Tennessee's 95 counties, excluding major metropolitan areas where local agencies wield more authority. So yeah, this is ridiculous. Hey, Underground Media, thanks for joining. If this is your first time joining me on the program, I'm Cypher. We are here live doing the news roundup and going over some COVID stuff that's happening in Tennessee, reading this article and giving some feedback as I read it. Let me continue. No proactive outreach regarding routine vaccines. After the health department's internal COVID-19 report was circulated on Friday, the rollback of vaccine outreach was further detailed in a Monday email from agency chief medical officer Dr. Tim Jones. Jones told staff that they should conduct no proactive outreach regarding routine vaccines and no outreach whatsoever regarding the HPV vaccine. Now this is the thing that a lot of people, maybe in like the Northeast or the West Coast, and maybe a smattering of states in between, don't know a lot about. But there has been this weird idea among conservatives and conservative Christians in particularly, that if you give the HPV vaccine, which is the human papillomavirus, which is it's genital warts, and it's also can cause ovarian cancer in women, and sometimes in rare cases anal cancer in everybody. Is that if you vaccinate against this, then teens are just going to go around and have sex all the time, like they're already doing, but more so because protection or something. I don't know. When it gets to sex education within the South and Bible Belt, it's pretty much non-existent, because if you talk about it, kids are gonna fuck. And that's what we're seeing here, and that's why they're saying no whatsoever, because of the pushback from Republican lawmakers. Staff were also told not to do any pre-planning for flu shots events at schools. Any information released about back-to-school vaccinations should come from the Tennessee Department of Education, not the Tennessee Department of Health, Jones noted. Any kind of informational sheets or other materials that we make available for dissemination should have the TDH, Tennessee Department of Health, logo removed, Jones. The health department did not confirm nor dispute the existence of Jones' email. In a written statement, department spokesman Sarah Tanksley credited the state's past outreach for high vaccination rates among children. For example, 95% of kindergartners were fully vaccinated last school year. Tanksley said the agency is now responding to an intense national conversation that is affecting how many families evaluate vaccination in general, and is planning more market research into the roots of vaccine hesitancy. Tennessee is on solid footing when it comes to childhood immunizations, and will continue to keep information and programming in place for parents, Tanksley said. We are simply mindful of how certain tactics could hurt that progress, i.e., telling kids to go get vaccinated. Well, you can't tell my kid what to do. I tell my kid what to do, right? That kind of thing. Normally, the health department regularly advocates for vaccinating kids against many diseases without controversy. For example, the 2019 department published at least 15 tweets that either explicitly recommended minors be vaccinated or featured a child in a pro-vaccine image or video. The agency's outreach campaign recommended vaccinations against flu, measles, mumps, and rubella, and human papillomavirus, or HPV, among others. Have a preteen ages 11 to 12? Make sure their HPV, TDAP, and meningitis vaccinations are up to date. These preteen vaccines help the body fight off serious diseases and keep children safe as they grow up. Children must turn in their vaccine records before they start the 7th grade. Bugs, you don't get 3 shots. Decisions to ratchet back outreach comes amid pressure from conservative lawmakers who have embraced misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine, said Dr. Michelle Ficus, Tennessee's former top vaccine official. Ficus was fired without explanation on Monday. Ficus said that she was scapegoated to appease lawmakers who had described routine vaccination outreach as reprehensible. Yeah, this is just so ridiculous, right? This is like oh, what did I just get? What was that? Hold on. I don't have, I need to put my alert on here. I'm sorry, guys. I will look that. Oh, yeah. Thanks for the follow. The virus is man-made. Oh, blah, 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 blah. No. Universal Discourse, could you, if you have to have mod power still, could you make sure they don't, they don't say anything like that in here? Like, seriously, piss off, mate. Like, go away. Anyways, almost got me. Almost got me to say it. But yeah, this is pretty ridiculous, right? So we're seeing all kinds of fear mongering, how the vaccine is causing all kinds of weird stuff. Like there was this weird libertarian fellow that I used to talk to on a very regular basis, and he just went, yeah. Shared some memes like, oh my god, like it's like the meme of like the girl doing this kind of thing. I was like, oh my god, right? And she's like, oh my god, I heard he has unvaccinated sperm. Like, it is getting out there, people. It is. I do not like being in a political bubble when it comes to social media, so I'll follow and be in a ton of different groups on like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Although my Twitter is pretty Twitch political streamer heavy right now. I'll probably follow some more people, but the stuff that's out there with these people is just like, honestly, it's borderline psychotic at this point. Like, if you get COVID, if you legitimately get COVID, you have the potential to have fertility issues, both as men and women. If you get the vaccine, there's no proof of that. But because of the former, they're like, oh my god, they're doing this to like population control and all this other bollocks. It's just, it's stupid. It is dumb. I've found a new insult to say to these people that cannot be construed in any way as being problematic or ableist. I like to call these people troggies or troggy, short for troglodyte. And troglodyte, we all is a person that is willfully ignorant. It is basically, they could control it, but they don't because reasons. And so that's what I call them. These people are troggies, everybody. Troggies. Remember that. My favorite word going forward. All right, going to continue. This is a failure of public health to protect the people of Tennessee, and that is what is reprehensible, like I said on Monday. When the people elected and appointed to lead the state put their political gains ahead of the public good, they have betrayed the people who have trusted them with their lives. Preach. Preach. I mean, seriously, right? After this story published online, the Tennessee chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a statement offering a strong and enduring endorsement of vaccines. The organization also celebrated Ficus as a timeless champion for children and vaccines. Actions that weaken Tennessee's overall public health readiness are clearly a step in the wrong direction at the wrong time, said chapter president Dr. Anna Morad in the statement. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Oh, they didn't type anything universal. They just followed to make me say their name. So... all right, back to the article. Until now, the country's health officials under the purview of the Department of Health have sometimes used schools as venues for coronavirus vaccine drive, and at least some of those events have primarily served adults, not minors. For example, 2 weeks ago, health officials held a 2-day vaccination drive at Woodlawn Elementary School outside of Clarksville. Under agency's new rules, events like this will no longer be permitted across most of the state. This shift is worrisome to Brian Helly, the CEO of Neighborhood Health, a group of nonprofit clinics providing vaccines in and around Nashville. In many rural Tennessee counties, school gymnasiums are one of the few venues large enough to hold vaccination events indoors with air conditioning with enough space for social distancing, Haley said. As I said, okay, so it was mentioned in this article, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit here to the next part because I already talked about that previously. Okay, here it is, lawmakers. So this is where it gets cray-cray. The Tennessee Department of Health began backing off vaccination outreach in the wake of a contentious legislative hearing in mid-June, where several conservative lawmakers chastised Precy for efforts to vaccinate teenagers. Lawmakers accused the agency of attempting to circumvent parents and peer pressure minors to be vaccinated, then discussed dissolving the entire health department to stop its vaccine advertisement. They were going to get rid of the entire department to stop telling teens to get vaccinated. Are you serious? Bruh. Department leaders are scheduled to reappear before the same group of lawmakers for more questioning on July 21st. And when that happens, I will be sure to be watching it and probably report to y'all because this is ridiculous. I have never said that I want to dissolve and reconstruct the Department of Health, said Representative Scott Picky, Republican for Kaluka, who proposed ending the agency on June 16th. What I said is, when we come back next month, I want that as a consideration. Okay, guy. 1, fuck you. 2, fuck you. That's what you're saying. You're saying that you're using it as a threat to get what you want. And because people took it as seriously as you meant it, they've gone back and stopped doing vaccine reach out to teens and young adults. They're stopping to use schools. Like, you've had that impact that you wanted, and that makes you a piece of shit. Just gonna, like, doesn't he look at this dude? Look at him. Doesn't he look like a piece of shit? I mean, really, look at that face. Look at it. Look how look teens, like, he's like, oh my god, you can't vaccinate the teenagers. Shut up. Eat it. Oh man, I'm actually upset reading this. In the wake of June hearing, the health department quietly began to make changes. The agency deleted Facebook and Twitter posts that gently recommended vaccines to teens. Internal emails revealed agency leaders ordered county-level staff not to hold any vaccination events intended for adolescents and only advertise events as available to the general population. The changes to Tennessee's vaccination strategy drew quick scorn online, where some worried political interference would leave the volunteer state more vulnerable to the virus. Yeah, the volunteer state, volunteering to die, apparently. Chelsea Clinton, a global... okay, I think I've said enough about this story. We're going to go ahead and call that one a day. So let me go ahead and... no! Oops. Okay, I got to remove that. We'll do none. Didn't like that. I don't like that cut. But anyways, yeah. I don't think I can say anything else about this particular story. Tennessee is shooting themselves in the foot big time. One of the things that we know about COVID is that there are other consequences of COVID other than death. They call it long COVID, and long COVID is essentially getting older, but super quick, I guess is the easiest way to describe it. People have one of the biggest complaints is of constant fatigue, and people that are 35 plus know that as we get older, as we get closer and closer to our twilight years, we're tired more often. The problem is that this is happening to people that are in their 20s. And we're starting to see it happen to kids as young as 13 years old because they're getting COVID now due to the other variants. And yeah, so, but other things with long COVID is weakness, fatigue, general weakness, not being able to perform to the level that you once were able to perform at, and that sort of thing. People have had weakness and think shortness of breath, so the inability to maintain rigorous activity and that sort of thing. Foggy brain is another problem with long COVID, and general ability to maintain focus for long periods of time. So essentially, you're just giving people ADD. Like it's pretty yeah, it's very very scary. And speaking of long COVID, I do have an article here that I got in my research that I'm going to share with you all, and I'm going to put it in the chat right now. So this article here is from U.S. News, and it's talking about some kids that have gotten long COVID and what they've had to deal with. Long COVID is something that adults have had to deal with for, well, I'll say since at least July of last year, probably longer, but that's when it started cropping up. And there have been groups and like social groups and wraparound services from doctors and things like that for adults for long COVID. But because there was no real hard evidence that kids were getting COVID even at all, these services weren't developed for children. And now with the Delta and Delta Plus variants of COVID, we're seeing children get it. And in this particular article, there's a 15-year-old girl who showed very, very minor symptoms when they themselves got COVID. And they were fine like after like a week. Fast forward 2 months later, they are not able to perform their dance as well anymore. They've been weak, tired, depressed, etc. And this was like fairly recently. So this was like not like when you couldn't see all your friends and everything. This is like fairly recently. And her doctor ordered her to discontinue dance entirely because that they worried that her symptoms were indicative of having a weak heart. And they're chopping this up to COVID. So these are the kind of things that we're having to deal with now. And these are going to be long-term health consequences going forward. At no fault of anybody's. People could do everything that they wanted, they needed to do correctly, and yet they're still experiencing all this stuff. And I guess that brings up a topic that I didn't really do much research on, but something that we can talk about is these March for Medicare for All that are happening across the country pretty soon, or have been going on. Like I said, I didn't look too much into it. I did a couple of the marches back in 2016, where it was like March for Science, March for Education, etc. I actually led a march for public education in Austin. That was super cool. You can check that out on Facebook. So March for Public Education Austin. I can drop a link for that as well. Really cool, great experience, but not something that I necessarily do again. I'm more about knocking on doors and stuff now than setting up a rally. The rally was cool. It helped connect people, but I want to be a little more proactive with it. So I'm not really too keen on these March for Medicare for All marches. But with that said, I do think that this is pertinent to the COVID conversation because of how long-acting COVID operates. It's going to require people's getting medical attention probably throughout their lives, more so than they would normally. Like, for somebody that's generally young and healthy, they can go to a doctor once a year. Maybe they get like strep throat or something, and so it's not that big of a deal. It's still very expensive. Don't get me wrong. It's still very expensive, but it's not a chronic condition. And that chronic condition is where most of the medical costs come in. Chronic and catastrophic conditions are where all the cost for healthcare come into play. Preventative and general annual checkups and stuff is not very expensive. At least it hasn't been for some time, especially with the opening of minute clinics and things like that. So I do think that this will bring more media attention to the issue, And I am hopeful that that translates to actual policy. Personally, and this is just my opinion, not the opinion of the cast, personally, I believe that Medicare for All, as it is written, is not that great. It goes well above and beyond what most modern healthcare systems across the world do in turn for universal healthcare. I prefer the German model personally. There's a really good documentary, PBS Frontline, that's called Healthcare Around the World, or Health Around the World, and it looks at every single major industrialized nation's healthcare system and how they pay for it, and try to get ideas for the US to help with its cost. And not just its cost, but also in terms of how we are as a people in the United States culturally, so they would mesh well in. And I don't think M4A matches that as well as it could. There's a variety of reasons for that. It pays for everything, which is without any copays, without any, the doc, and it reimburses doctors in the current reimbursement system, which means it's a fee-for-service system. Fee-for-service is terrible. It is a perverse incentive. So you have with a fee-for-service, you're basically, the doctor makes more money the more services they provide. With a different type of service, a different type of payment system, maybe preventative or maintenance care or something like that, they would be provided bonuses for helping alleviate chronic conditions and things like that. So a better incentive structure. And on top of tort reform, you're just on top of tort law, where doctors are always CYA with medical malpractice. It just leads to people getting tested for everything, regardless if they need to or not. And that puts strain on the healthcare system, not just in terms of cost, but in terms of access. Because anytime somebody goes into the doctor for something they don't need, and I'm not saying like don't go to the doctor, go to the doctor, get checked out if you're worried about something. But if you're giving the doctor incentive to get all the tests, and then you're paying for all the tests, so there's no incentive for a person to actually not get them all, then you have an issue with doctors having to cover their ass when it comes to lawsuits. It creates a system of do everything because you can, and it's safe to do so. And I don't think that that's good. I think it will lead to too many people seeking out too much care at one time, and potentially take away the ability of care for other people simply because doctors are a finite resource. And there's things that we could do as a country to make becoming a doctor or a general practitioner and things like that easier, cheaper, and maybe actually look for people overseas and bring them in, things like that. There's a ton of stuff we can do to raise the amount of doctors in the United States while also keeping costs low. Those aren't being done, but even if you do all those things, if there's too many people using too much of the system, and this isn't saying, like, again, let me stress this, I'm not saying don't get checked out. I'm not saying we should have high cost as a barrier to entry for people to get checked out. That's immoral. I'm just saying, like, people shouldn't overuse the system, and when you have these incentives, it's going to encourage overuse. That's all I'm saying. So that's why I don't think M4A as it's currently written is very, very good, but it is way better than what we have, and I'll take it. I'm not going to fight against it, what I'm saying. So yeah, that's that. Let's see. What is another kind of thing that's going on? Well, I think we would be remiss as a cast, as myself, if I didn't give credence to note document. If I didn't credence to this. So I am fairly certain you all are aware that there is a theory that the coronavirus was actually leaked from a lab, not intentionally, but maybe accidentally or something like that. And the WHO at first was 100% no, couldn't happen. Now the WHO, World Health Organization, is saying that it was premature to rule it out as a pandemic's origin. So the head of the World Health Organization acknowledged it was premature to rule out a potential leak between the COVID-19 pandemic and a laboratory leak. And he said Thursday he is asking China to be more transparent as scientists search for the origins of the coronavirus. In a rare departure from his usual deference to powerful members countries, WHO Director General Tedros said getting access to raw data had been a challenge for the international team that traveled to China earlier this year to investigate the source of COVID-19. First human case was identified in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Tedros told reporters that the UN Health Agency based in Geneva is asking China to be transparent, open, and cooperate, especially on the information, raw data, that we asked for at the early days of the pandemic. He said that there had been a premature push to rule out the theory that the virus might have escaped from a Chinese government lab in Wuhan, undermining WHO's own March report, which concluded that the laboratory leak was extremely unlikely. I was a lab technician myself. I'm an immunologist, and I have worked in the lab, and lab accidents happen, Tedros says. It's common. So this is going to give conspiracy theorists a field day on this, because one of the reasons that the lab leak theory was downplayed potentially is because a lot of people were looking for someone to blame for COVID-19. It couldn't just be an act of nature. It was too severe. No, it had to be evil China. And if evil China was responsible, then they must pay. And that is partially why this was downplayed so much. Now, there isn't any concrete evidence that suggests that it is a lab leak. In fact, there's not any evidence really at all, other than some potential people that said that it was leaked and they were persecuted for it, but they haven't given the goods, and they said they lost it, and the story changes all the time, which means it's probably a lie from them, right? But with that said, it doesn't really seem to be the case that it was a lab leak. It certainly could have happened. Don't get me wrong. They were researching COVID viruses in Wuhan, and the reason they were researching COVID viruses in Wuhan is because of the SARS virus. And the SARS virus is a coronavirus, and it also swept through Southeast Asia and caused deaths and sicknesses very high, which is why you see a bunch of people in Korea, China, Japan wearing masks all the time anytime that they're sick, because they're trying to fight off infection. And then SARS really changed that dynamic. But from other reports that I've read, it does seem to be that it was more than likely a natural occurrence, simply because we're seeing that the variants that have spread throughout the world are earlier than we anticipated, where their origins were. And it is very possible that one of the mysterious outbreaks of pneumonia that happened in, I want to say it was northwestern China, but don't quote me on that. I don't know the exact region of it. There was an incident of where people were cleaning out caves in China of bat poop, and they came down with a weird respiratory infection that seemed to have similar symptoms as COVID. And that was, I think it was a year before the outbreak. And another thing that happens in China is that they have cave tours and stuff where all these bats are, and that's why they were cleaning it, so they would be better for tourists or for development. And it's quite possible, since coronaviruses themselves originate in bats oftentimes, that it happened in nature. So while the WHO is saying, hey, we shouldn't have ruled it out, and China's being a little shady about it, I still wouldn't go out and say, haha, it was China. I wouldn't say that. Don't be that person. That's my take on this. I think I'm done talking about COVID. I think I covered it fairly well with this, what was happening. So let's go on to some cheerier news and talk about the push for legal weed, everybody. What's happening? Democrats and some Republicans are coming together in order to legalize marijuana, or at least decriminalize it and remove it from Schedule 1 access. So if you don't know, Schedule 1 drugs are a classification of drugs from the Controlled Substances Act that states that there is no legitimate purpose for this drug at all, which means it's just for recreational fun, hippie times, get your money, get your high on and have fun and be a flower child and have sex with everybody because it feels good drug. Now, we all know that's bullshit. At this point, it is pretty clear that there is a medical use for weed. Now, I'm not going to be one of these like hippie people that are like, man, weed cures cancer, dude. Just smoke it or take it in like an edible and you'll be fine forever. No, that's bullshit. It does look as though that it helps with things like depression, chronic pain, nausea from getting chemo, and there's some other properties with it. There's certain receptors in the brain that take cannabinoids that can help with other things. There's been people that have severe epilepsy or I don't know. Is it MS? This is from memory. I just know that there was a person that was suffering from a chronic condition, and when they smoked marijuana, they were able to function fairly normally within society. And in fact, the government grows weed to give to people that have like degenerative bone disease, bone cancer, and that sort of thing to help them manage their pain. So it's something that the government has known for at least 30 years, if not longer, and it being on Schedule 1 is complete bullshit. Now, the reasons that it is going for the reasons that it's coming together with these lawmakers is not out of any kind of altruistic, oh man, we really fucked up with the war on drugs, bro. It's money. Let's be real. They saw that Colorado getting that sweet $2 billion, and they wanted in on some of that cheddar, and that's why they're looking to legalize it. And of course, you have a budgeting group of younger Republicans that are like, freedom. Like, the government can't tell me what to do. It's a plant. Smoke it, right? Government can't tell me what to do with a plant that doesn't harm nobody. So you're seeing some of that with Republicans as well, especially the libertarian that vote Republican sector of the Republican Party. And that's been a thing for a very long time, but they're starting to get more momentum in there. So I want to go ahead and cover one of these articles, or at least maybe cover both of them, but at least one, talking about what the Democratic senators move to decriminalize weed means for us, coming at you from ABC News. So let's go ahead and get into, oh, I'm sorry, I unmuted it because I was watching another video. Go mute that. All right. So let's go ahead and get that started. Right. All right. For the first time in history, some Senate Democrats on Wednesday moved to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, proposing to remove the cannabis from federal list of controlled substances. Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, one of the leaders of the effort, promised to use his clout to make decriminalization a Senate priority. I don't know if Schumer's got clout. He is the majority leader, so he has some, but he's not pulling AOC numbers playing Among Us, right? So we can see. This is monumental, Schumer told reporters. At long last, we are taking steps in the Senate to right the wrongs of the failed war on drugs. While Schumer conceded that Democrats do not yet unanimously support the draft decriminalization bill he unveiled, he said that the announcement marks an important step in combating injustice, especially among communities of color. The war on drugs has really been a war on people, practically people of color, Schumer said. The waste of human resources because of the historic overcriminalization has been one of the greatest historical wrongs for the last decades, and we are going to change it. Schumer said that draft bill, being proposed by Senate Finance Committee Chairman Wade Ryden and Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, also aims to expunge criminal records and create banking systems that give a small and minority businesses a seat at the table, which is good. I mean, so with the criminalization of marijuana, it has always been a thing that poor people have sold amongst other people as a way to earn extra money. That's what, that's how bootlegging was. That's how pretty much any kind of prohibited good is sold among people. It's among the poor, among the downtrodden, among the people that are not fully integrated into society. And when these laws were enacted way back in like the 30s, not the Controlled Substance Act, but before then, when weed was made illegal, I think it was the 30s, with Reefer Madness and all that stuff. It was really targeting black people and Mexicans. Mexicans specifically. I'm being clear on this. They were worried that white women were going to find them more attractive, a little more suave, a little more jazzy, I guess, to pull it in some more references there. But yeah, so that was really the case with this. And so, saying that you're going to give people that, maybe were in jail for selling weed, first shot at getting some of the loans and things like that is actually fairly good. And I think it's one of the things that is, I know it's definitely happening in Oakland, California, but I think it's also happening in New York. And so it's kind of following both of those models with this, which is really good, actually. Schumer said that the draft bill being proposed was Senate Finance Committee Chairman. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, that was already read that. Booker, who has long advocated for decriminalization, said the need for such a bill is urgent. Lives are being destroyed every single day, and the hypocrisy of this is that right here in the Capitol now, people running for Congress, people running for Senate, people running for the President of the United States, who readily admit that they've used marijuana. We have children in this country. People all over the nation are veterans, black and brown people, low-income people, now bearing the stain of having a criminal conviction for doing things that half of the last 4 presidents admitted to doing, he said. To date, some 18 states have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, and 37 states, along with the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, now allow it for medical. So yeah, that is a good wrap-up of that segment of that. Let's go ahead and look at why we're seeing it from Republicans now. So legal weed is gaining a little ground among GOP congressmen, probably because of the money. I have actually not read this, so we're both in for a treat. Let me go ahead and check the chat. Hey, he's not wrong. Yeah, nope, 100% correct. Thank you, Def of Certainty, for the comment there. Yes, he is not wrong. It is very, very, very true. Oh, and if any of you would like to join me on the program, the Discord is open. Go ahead and jump into the Discord, ping me in chat or what have you, and we'll be able to talk about this in the Discord, and you can get your questions answered and talk about this on air while we're doing the news roundup. So, plugged for that. Most congressional Democrats say it's time to end federal prohibition on marijuana, and a growing number of Republicans agree. In a town that moves at a glacial pace, this is one issue that picked up a lot of energy over time, said Representative Dave Joyce, Republican from Ohio. But that energy is not enough to change the law. Lawmakers don't see eye to eye on how to legalize cannabis, and businesses are stuck in the middle of that debate. Both political parties are budding plans for legal weed. Joyce is co-sponsoring a GOP plan that would regulate marijuana like alcohol and enable the Department of Veteran Affairs to prescribe cannabis treatments for veterans. That's a huge thing. Like, it has been proven pretty much at this point that marijuana helps with PTSD symptoms, and it is better than and been proven to help with chronic pain, which both are better than narcotics. So full stop right there. Good on him. Many Democrats like those ideas but want to go farther. Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat from Massachusetts, said the lucrative marijuana marketplace must welcome people of color. People who were disproportionately locked up and are being locked out of the multi-billion-dollar industry. Pressley is a co-sponsor of the MORE Act, which stands for Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement. It would clear some criminal records and impose a 5% to 8% sales tax. Some of the revenue would fund a special program for cannabis entrepreneurs from neighborhoods targeted in the war on drugs. Now this is strange to me, to be honest with you. While it is true in a lot of the country that the neighborhoods are still pretty much the same for where these things were targeted, I think it would be better if it went to the people directly. People coming out of prison, or people to have like records for it and are out and about. I think it would be better to give it to those people directly rather than going to the communities, because the community makeups have changed. They have undergone, we know about it from gentrification. We know about it from immigrant populations moving in and out of communities into other areas. And we know that, a lot of people of color have moved to Atlanta in the last decade, and things like that. And so these neighborhood makeups have changed, and I think it would be better, potentially better, to like I said, to target the people that were impacted directly. And especially if they're coming out of prison for low-level drug offenses. I mean, let's be real. A person that is in prison for a bid for drugs probably has some business acumen. They were able to make money on the side. They know how to hustle, stuff like that. So it'd be pertinent to help them set up their own business in a legal sphere of something that they already know. And I think that probably would be better. So that's just a little critique for that. That's a deal breaker for Joyce. Because of course it is. You can't do anything that addresses racism. Okay, I'm good. It's good. I'm calm. It's all good. All right. So back to the article. You're going to tax the people who went into the industry and follow the laws of their state, and we're going to then wipe the slate clean for people who have been in the black market against them and then subsidize them to now get in business against existing companies. That doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me. No, it makes a ton of sense because they're only in the business because, one, they've already had the capital. Two, they probably just didn't get caught when they're dealing weed and probably washed that money anyways. Three, you're fucked over people that were doing nothing in more. We're fucking over people that didn't do anything immoral in the first place. So let's just put the kibosh on that. He's wrong. Joyce noted that under his plan, states would be free to tax marijuana or launch social justice programs on their own. Some already have. Leah Samura used an equity initiative in Massachusetts to get her license for a recreational marijuana store near the Harvard campus in Cambridge. Ooh, good for her. That is prime real estate. Like this woman, right? Wait, what is it? That point. Hold on. I can do it. This woman right here, right here. Yeah, good for her. That's prime real estate. I'm glad. She's probably going to be making bank. She's going to be successful. There's a certain irony to the location. When Samura opened up Yamba Boutique this fall, she'll be selling weed for a former outpost for local cops. Oh, that's rich. I love it. I'm here for this. That is great. I think to be a black woman in Harvard Square with a cannabis shop that used to be a police station is just an amazing opportunity. Not wrong. 100%. Hey, kudos to you for pulling that one off. That is, man, that's some poetic justice for her. Bringing her business to the verge of opening has not been easy. Cannabis may be legal in Massachusetts, but the federal prohibition makes banks wary of issuing business loans. Samura turned to a private investor named Sean Hope. He's a successful attorney and real estate developer. But the new marijuana venture is a stretch even for him. I've essentially leveraged my family's worth in real estate to be able to participate, he said. That's a tremendous risk. And that's true, especially with the way the housing market is going. If you're over leveraged and the housing market crashes, you're kind of underwater. So again, good on this person. I'm here for this. This is a happy story to me. Even though it sucks that they have to go around all this stuff, it is good that it happened. So yeah, that's a fun story. And we all know, I'm not going to read the rest of this, but we all know that Biden is not for marijuana legalization because reasons. He's old fuddy-duddy from Scranton, and he got inundated with anti-marijuana messaging his entire life, and he's an old dude. Remember, he helped fight off Corn Pop, and Corn Pop was a bad dude. He's probably a bad dude because he was selling weed. Let's be real. So yeah, I think I covered that topic pretty well. I want to know your thoughts about the legalization of marijuana. Drop them in the comment section below. Go ahead and hit me up on the Discord if you do Discord, or the Facebook group if you do Facebook. And I will drop the Facebook group link and the Facebook group page within the chat here in a second. I think I can just do this. Let's try this. Whoop. Aha. Oh, wait. Yeah, there it goes. It worked. All right, it worked. So that worked. So that's the FB group. And then go ahead and hit me up on Twitter as well. I need to get rid of the I'll have to fix that so it doesn't show up everything. But yeah, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter as well under crowdsourced poll. I'm posting memes every day around 11:45 p.m. Because that's what I do. So go ahead and give me your comments, thoughts on legal marijuana at any of the social media platforms that you use, and I will be sure to get a response to you in a timely manner. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the comments in from the chat. So we have one from Death of Certainty. No downsides, all upsides. It's sweeping the nation, which is a good thing. A good first step to ending the war on drugs. True. That is 100% accurate. Thank you, Death of Certainty, for that comment. All right. What else do we got on the news today? Well, on the news today, we have, I could cover some climate change. I could cover some other stuff, but I think it would be pertinent to cover some Cuba news. So in Cuba, as people on the political left are sure to know by now, especially if you participate in Twitter and have seen commie Twitter, which is what I'm calling it. I don't know. They call it leftist Twitter, communist Twitter, sickle Twitter. I don't know. I'm calling it commie Twitter because they're a bunch of commies. Anyways, as we know, Cuba has been undergoing major unrest over the last couple of weeks. Specifically because of fallout from COVID's response and the immense pressure from inflation that has been falling the Cuban regime there. Cuba used to have extreme controls on currency. They had a dual currency system, and I only know this because of the Twitter thread, which I will drop it in a moment. But they had a dual currency system where they had internal pesos and pesos for exchange, and the pesos for exchange allowed them to tightly regulate the amount of US dollars that entered and exited the country. They essentially used that system to help subsidize the poor, as food budget and everything like that, to keep the regime stable. They were quickly trying to do away with that over the last 3 years or so in order to kind of be to evolve in the China model, but instead of exporting goods across the world, because you can't really do that if you're a tiny island. You don't have the space for factories all over the place and things like that. While they're able to export doctors and medicine and things like that, because they actually do have a fairly good and robust health system, they are not able to do as much as China does, simply because they don't have the people or space. So what they were hoping to do was attract a ton of tourists. And prior to the Castro regime, Cuba was a major tourist spot for people all over the Western Hemisphere, and especially the United States. Now, there was problems with this, multinationals owning hotels and prime real estate and all this stuff, which is why the Cuban Revolution happened and why it was successful in the first place. But they were trying to do that again, and in order to do that, they had to not as tightly control the exchange rate of their currency in order to be able to allow the free trade of the currencies within the country, so they could suck it back up and then, do what they do with it and everything like that. Now, the Cuban regime with that gone, there has been a huge amount of inflation. Inflation that's happening across the world right now because of a goods scarcity issue, which will resolve itself in time as the supply chain adjusts to demand and revamps up from shutting down during COVID-19. But they've experienced this, and yeah. So one of the things you're seeing here is Tanky Twitter is my name. Yeah, Tanky Twitter works too. I like that. That's a good one. But one of these things here is that the Cuban president has actually made a rare mea culpa, admitting the failures that fueled the unrest, which is really unheard of in Cuba. Now, one of the things that should be noted is that Fidel Castro himself was immensely popular throughout his entire life in Cuba. After revolution, it wasn't just because of things like control of media and control of education and things like that. He was legitimately popular with people that were alive during the revolution, because the revolution had legitimate reasons for it. Now we can say things about his brutal crackdown on people you know, Che Guevara murdered gay people and anybody that he thought was degenerate. There's this weird right-wing thing with some communists where they're like pro-traditional values and weirdly reactionary in that realm. I wonder why that. No, well, for another time. But there was legitimate reasons for it. So him being popular mean that he didn't really have to admit to shit. And now that he's gone, and now that there's a new president in, even after Raul has stepped down, they're actually coming to terms with this in order to quell the unrest. Let's go ahead and look at this article together from NPR. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, for the first time, is offering some self-criticism while saying the government's shortcomings in handling shortages and other problems played a role in this week's protest. But in a televised address Wednesday night, he also called on Cubans to not act with hate, a reference to the violence that occurred. Okay, I need to drink some more. Sorry about that. But in a televised address Wednesday night, he also called on Cubans not to act with hate, a reference to the violence that occurred at some of the rare street demonstrations in which protesters voiced grievances over high food prices, food shortages, power outages, while some people also called for a change in the government. While until now, the Cuban government had only blamed social media and the US government for the weekend protests. So did Tanky Twitter. Max Blumenthal thinks that it's just a CIA operation because that's all he does. Which were the biggest scenes seen in Cuba since a quarter of a century ago, when the then President Fidel Castro personally went into the streets to calm crowds of thousands furious over dire shortages following the collapse of the Soviet Union and its economic subsidies for the island. Diaz-Canel, however, said the failings by the state played a role in the unrest. We have to gain experiences from these disturbances. We also have to carry out critical analysis of our problems in order to act and overcome and avoid their repetition. In the protests, many Cubans expressed anger over long lines and food shortages, and medicine as well as repeated electricity outages. Some demanded a faster pace of vaccination against the coronavirus, but there were also calls for political change in country government by the Communist Party for some decades. Police moved in and arrested dozens of protesters, sometimes violently, and the government had accused protesters of looting and vandalizing shops. Small protests continued Monday, and officials reported at least one death. No incidences were reported on Wednesday. Our society is not a society that generates hatred, and those people acted with hatred. The fleeing of Cubans is a feeling of solidarity, and these people carried out these armed acts with vandalism, yelling for death, planning to raid public places, breaking, robbing, throwing stones. Authorities did not report the number of people arrested. Colonel Morame Bravat of the Interior Ministry said Wednesday only that they are mostly between the ages of 25 and 37 and will be persecuted for such crimes as public disorder, assault, contempt, robbery, or damage. Cuba is suffering its worst crisis in years from a combination of the coronavirus pandemic that has paralyzed its economy, including the vital tourism industry, inefficiencies in the state-run economy, and the tightening of the U.S. sanctions on the island under Trump. The administration of President Trump imposed more than 200 measures against the island in 4 years. So yeah, that is the long of the short of it from Cuba. Now, with that said, I do want to drop that Twitter link that I discussed prior to reading this article for y'all, and it is really good. It is for a Twitter thread, it is very long. If it was written out as like one seamless like page or something, it might be like 2 or 3 pages of information, but it covers a ton of Cuba's history and economics and everything like that, and why this is happening. I think it's very accurate. I looked into it after reading this thread, and it seemed to be good there. And so I thought it's very good to share with y'all, so I'll be dropping it in the chat now. It is from JMC. He's one of those rare Twitter users with a 3-letter. No, he's red dilettante. So he's not a rare 3-letter person, but whatever. So yeah, good stuff there. I would highly recommend checking that out, and I will be sure to put it in the comments below this video once it is up on YouTube, or once the cast is. Now, there's other things happening in international news, but before we get into that, I think it should be important to state that there are things that this event is going to impact American politics. We already have Ron DeSantis calling on Biden to step up in helping restore internet to Cuba. Now, the Cuban government has disconnected the internet from Cubans, and to be honest, it's not something the US can really do to restore access. The backbones of the internet can be cut off at the source, and that will shut down the internet for a country or a locality. If you've ever experienced a internet outage because some weirdo decided to like dig a hole in their yard and hit the line or something like that, or like a backhoe or road work or something took out a line, you understand that these things are not as easily to re-put up as some people might think. Now, there is an interesting thing that some people developed to allow people to connect to the internet via radio waves. This was done for Syria protesters, where they broadcasted, I think it was at like 128 kilobytes a second, so very slow internet, but you could still read pages, post to social media, things like that, just over regular radio airwaves. And those were actually broadcasted into Syria from, I think it was actually the United States, but it was probably several other places to help ensure the coverage. You can look that up to double check me on where it was broadcasted from, but it was definitely an interesting thing that was possible through just regular radio frequency waves. And so something like that is something that the US government could potentially do. It could also maybe beam internet from a satellite connected feed to over Wi-Fi by having high altitude, but that would be hit or miss as well. It would take a lot of resources, jet fuel and that sort of thing to do that. Potentially you could do, Facebook had an idea to put up weather balloons basically around India to provide India with internet connection, where the internet homepage would be the Facebook homepage to increase Facebook uptake. So there's things that could be done, but it's not as simple as Ron DeSantis has claimed here. Now, another thing that is important to note with this is that the fallout from the Cuban protest is going to have an immense impact on how Cubans in Florida vote in 2022. Now, we saw that Cubans in 2020 voted staunchly, almost overwhelmingly, for Donald Trump. And it is likely that if Biden doesn't navigate this in such a way where he can be both understanding of the protest, of our home politics, as well as understanding the politics of Cuba and trying to normalize relations. He was part of the Obama administration when that happened. A lot of Cubans were pissed off about that it will prove to be a challenge in South Florida for whoever runs in 2024 as a Democrat. Now, should we care? I don't know. The sanctions that have been imposed on Cuba by U.S. law, not presidential action, but actual U.S. law, have been pretty abhorrent. They are not targeted. These are not like the Magnitsky sanctions that happened to counter the Russian assassination of Magnitsky. These are not the kind of sanctions that evolved in the mid-90s to smack Saddam's hand for trying to commit genocide against the Kurds, and that sort of thing. These are it's a blockade, a straight blockade of goods going into Cuba, and from Cuba being able to sell its goods within the United States. So that has a direct impact on the citizens of Cuba, and those kinds of sanctions actually help improve the way people see the government. They think more highly of the government if you're under sanctions from a state another state that impacts you. If the sanctions are targeted only towards political elites, and there might be, and then if those sanctions that are targeting political elites then lead to economic strife within a country, then the people of that country are more likely to blame the regime, because they're like, wait, we know, like, people aren't actually as stupid as a lot of people want to say that people are. They'll be like, hey, wait, we know what kind of sanctions are happening. You just can't get Cristal or Lamborghini or something as cheaply as you could. And why are you taking that on us? And that actually causes people to see the regime in a more negative light. Now, that does depend. This is my Libra coming out. Libra. Anyways, that does depend on whether or not the country being sanctioned has almost has complete totalitarian control over the country, as in what happens with North Korea. Those kind of targeted sanctions won't work on a state like North Korea. It's too totalitarian. There's too much propaganda. They've lived under the guise of Kim being God incarnate, the Kim family rather being God incarnate, and that sort of thing. So those kind of sanctions probably won't work. But in Cuba or Russia or Iran, Iraq, other places where we've implemented these kind of sanctions have actually been fairly good. So I can think that Biden could navigate this to a degree if he put those sanctions on, but also allowed families to send remittances to their loved ones in Cuba and that sort of thing. And I think that could actually help with his leftward flank as well as his rightward flank. And I think that would be the best method forward for that. Oh man, I need water. So yeah, that is Cuba in a nutshell. There's some more stuff that people can read about it. But those are the two big articles. That was a big article about it. Talked about a lot of the stuff that's happening. The Twitter thread that I shared in the chat is very good. Please read it. It is really, really good with that. I am actually going to be right back in a second. I do need to get some more water. Where it's going. Right back. All right, I am back. All right, thank you for being patient while I went and got some water. Now we have some more international news to talk about. We have some developments coming out of Iran, and this is another situation where Commie Twitter, Tanky Twitter, has some thoughts, and those thoughts, honestly, are not that crazy. So we have a story that is currently still developing, where the 4 Iranian agents have been charged for their role in a plot to kidnap a U.S. journalist. Now, this journalist is named... the journalist... Masih Alanjad. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I am sorry if I butchered it. I am not hooked on phonics because hooked on phonics was not hooked on me. Went to a Montessori school, so but I try. I try. So this woman is a very big critic of the Iranian regime. She is an Iranian, an American Iranian, and has worked as a journalist for many years, being very critical of the Iranian regime. And what has it seems, at least from unnamed sources, seems to be have had happened here is that the Iranian the Iranian intelligence agency hired an American private investigator to tailor her for many months, and tailored for many months to gather the kind of intelligence needed in order to actually execute kidnapping plot. And this kidnapping plot was going to be done to kidnap her from the U.S. And this is where it gets a little suspect. So I'm giving the left there. You know what? I'm part of the left, so I'm getting people further to the left of me that are a bit more anti U.S. intelligence agency, anti U.S. foreign policy per se. Some benefits of here, benefits of their doubt, because it's understandable. Where they were going to take her to Venezuela to then get her to Iran. Now, this isn't as suspect as I originally thought when I first heard about this story, because Iran has done renditions, which the U.S. has done, Germany has done, Britain has done. Like a lot of major countries do these sort of things, these sort of kidnapping plots, and then take them to a friendly country that doesn't really give a shit about human rights, or doesn't care about the human rights of that particular individual that you're trying to extradite, for cover, and to then be able to do it where less people are aware that this is happening. Now, going from the United States to Venezuela is a pretty long trip, but if you have like a speedboat that can go to a yacht, and then the yacht can travel to Venezuela, it's not really that hard to see it being done. Iran has done similar things in the past, but given that the only people that know about it are the journalist who was told by the FBI, and given the Americans' history with Iran lying in order to get the public on their side for different things, especially when people believe that the U.S. government, U.S. intelligence agencies are more conservative, more anti-Iran than the U.S. in general. It does. You should be a bit skeptical. Well, maybe not be a bit. Let me not say should be skeptical. Let me say that it is completely understandable for people to be skeptical of this story and report. Now, the fact that it's coming from the FBI, and they have named individuals from Iran that they have charged in Manhattan court for this particular plot, gives it more credence, in my opinion, than if it was like some unnamed Central Intelligence Agency person that is currently residing in Iran or something like that, because there's more people that have to kind of know about it for the charges to be done, for the FBI to be involved, and that sort of thing, that it gives it more credence that it's an actual thing, in my opinion, than if there's so few people that know about it that it could just be one person trying to pull the wool out over people. So I do want to say that is. Now, with this, the private investigator, I'm actually not sure if the private investigator has been charged. I don't think they were. Prosecutors say that the plan was bankrolled by a fifth person, Nilafar Bahadorfar. While working as a department store, she facilitated payments to the private investigator used by the group Elanjad. So yeah, so there's 5 people involved. I'm guessing this woman was arrested for facilitating payments as well. And the people that are charged do not necessarily appear to be in the U.S. Right now. It's possible that they are in the United States to carry out this plot, but it doesn't appear that they're not in custody. We'll just put it that way. So that is an interesting story, and like I said, I do want to give the left their benefit of doubt, because it does make sense for this kind of thing to be suspect. So yeah. Now, there's other news coming out of Iran, and this is some interesting things that is fairly interesting, and it gives more credence to different things that are happening. And I'm going to go ahead and read this story on air with y'all. And what we have here is, Facebook disrupts Iranian hackers using platform to target U.S. military personnel. Now, what they were doing is what is called social hacking. They're using social media honeypots, posing as different affiliates of like defense contracting, cousin, or what have you, in order to solicit information that could be beneficial in either the actual hacking attempts, so trying to figure out passwords or security questions, that sort of thing, or get close enough to where state secrets are revealed. So it's not just pure hacking, it is social hacking and hacking. So needed to put that out here before reading the story. Facebook on Thursday announced that it had taken steps to disrupt a group of Iranian-backed hackers that had leveraged the platform as part of a wider effort to target U.S. military personnel and the defense industry in other countries. According to Facebook, a cyber criminal group known as Tortoiseshell took steps including creating fake accounts, posing as employees of defense and aerospace companies, pushing out malware tools, and using fake websites to steal login credentials of the work and personal accounts of victims. Military personnel and organizations in the United Kingdom and Europe were also targeted in the campaign. Facebook officials stressed Thursday that the platform was one of the elements of a much broader cross-platform cyber espionage operation. This activity had the hallmark of a well-resourced and persistent operation, while relying on relatively strong operational security measures to hide who was behind it. Mike Dvalinsky's Facebook head of cyber espionage investigation, and David Otarangovich, director of threat disruption at the company, wrote in a blog post about the hacking group on Thursday. The group's activity on Facebook manifested primarily in social engineering, social hacking, and driving people off platform, e.g. email messaging, collaboration services, and websites, rather than directly sharing the malware itself, they noted. Facebook found evidence that some of the malware used by the hacking group was developed by an Iranian IT company linked to the Iranian military, with government executives linked to groups previously sanctioned by the US government. Now, the reason that Facebook is able to do this is because it collects all our data every minute of every day. So if somebody screws up and says, hey, I'm doing this thing on one account to another account, that account isn't the right account, then it can make all these connections through things like, what is it? What's it called? Oh, what was that? I need to really, oh, Roundup commercial. Oh, man. Go away. Man, I lost it. Thank you for the follow, Tiberius D. Hey, glad you followed, man. Glad you could be here. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. So the reason they're able to do this is due to social network analysis and leveraging the massive amount of data that it collects on every single one of us to make these connections through artificial intelligence and data science protocols, which I do for my job as well. Not on this scale, more of a business side of the house, but I'm able to utilize some of these things, and I will be sharing some of that information in the future with y'all. So yeah, that's why they're able to do this. They're able to find this thing. Now, where was I? Okay, the group previously targeted IT providers in Saudi Arabia, and Glacier noted it was known in the past to mostly focus on IT industry in the Middle East. This case is far from the first time Facebook has responded to Iranian-linked malicious activity on its platform. A report put out by the company in May found that a third of the networks the company shut down between...
Okay, it's happening.
Oh, who's hosting? Oh my god. Oh my god, who's hosting? Raid! Tiberius! Thanks for the raid, man. Thanks for the raid, dude. Appreciate it. See, I need to get my notifications on. I need to get my little alert on there put up on this thing. So yeah. But so as I was saying, the case is the first time that it's been malicious activity. Report come out in May. A third of the networks the company shut down between 2017 and 2020 for inauthentic behavior or either linked to Russia or Iran. It also has taken down accounts linked to Iran's attempt to interfere in U.S. elections. Everybody's trying to interfere everybody's elections using social engineering. It's easy. It doesn't require much. You can train a bot to post ridiculous things. Train a bot to friend a bunch of ridiculous people on both sides of the spectrum, get them all together and repost ridiculous shit to just influence people to be the dicks that they all want to be. So it's not really that big of a deal. It's something that people used to do on a regular basis online just for lulz, and now governments around the world have discovered they can do the same thing, and it's very effective. I should probably do my Fight the Avatar series that I was hoping to do back 3 or 4 years ago, and talk about these kind of things in order to fight against this nonsense and against your own nonsense internally, but when I have time. All right, back to the article. Sarah Jones, the senior principal analyst at FireEye Management Threat Intelligence, said Thursday in a statement provided to The Hill that Facebook's description of the Iranian groups, which outsources all or parts of their operation to outside companies, is consistent with their own observations. Some of the fake website used to target victims were a spoofed U.S. Department of Labor job search site, along with domains associated with the family of former President Trump. Oh, that's just chef's kiss. Because if you're going to dupe people, duping Trump supporters is going to be by using Trump family and messages is going to be so easy. And I really, really don't mean to talk shit about them that much. But this is one of the easiest things to do because Trump family does it themselves. They straight up blink people out of money on a daily fucking basis, putting out bullshit. And why not get on the grift if you're an adversary of the US? It's easy. So yeah, there you go. The existence of the Trump-related domains is noticeable, though we have no evidence that these domains were operationalized or used to target anyone affiliated with the Trump family or properties, Jones said. Domains such as these could suggest social engineering associated with U.S. political topics. Iran is still an aggressive cyber actor that shouldn't be ignored, Jones stressed. Though a lot of their activity is focused on the Middle East, they're not limited to the region, because everybody is connected. You're all one big happy family. And yes, we are good. So I had some follows from Tiberius rating, so I'm going to thank everybody. Known on Sense, thank you for that follow. There you go. Have the little picture up there. Get the finger point from Boehner there. And Smiley San. Yeah, there you go. Have a anime girl wave. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it, everybody. This is what I live for. I live to talk about the news, politics, and everything with everybody, anyone I can. Oh, played it twice. Well, whatever. Anybody that I can. If this is your first time ever joining the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup, I am the host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup and podcast. We are a podcast born out of an actual Facebook debate community and that has existed since at least 2016. This community gave birth to the podcast because some of the admins, myself included, wanted to actually... No nonsense. Oh, yeah, it probably is. You're right. But wanted to get together and pontificate to the world and do this in a more interactive way, and thus a podcast was born. We have been on hiatus for the actual podcast for a couple of months now due to personal and real life issues. However, generally speaking, when we do pick it back up, it will be 2 produced podcasts a month covering a wide variety of topics, including MMT, the Syrian Civil War, the Libyan Civil War, alt-right, among other things. You can get that on every single podcast streaming service on the net, but we like Spotify because it propagates the soonest out of all the podcast services with our podcast host. Also, we do this weekly news roundup on every Thursday, where I and others cover the week's news in the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. So please be sure to check out at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time wherever you can get it, which is YouTube or Twitch. So with that, oh nice, thank you Chill Brazilian for the follow. Appreciate it, man. You get the crowd cheer for that one. Awesome. So yeah, that is what has happened with Iran. With that and with other Iranian news, we have this is, of course, anytime Iran is in the news, so is Israel. And with this, Israel is planning on planning a massive military buildup to counter Iran arming itself with a nuclear weapon. Never mind the fact that Israel has had an agreement with the United States to keep its nuclear program afloat and under wraps for decades, and they have 3 or 4 of their own nuclear weapons at a minimum that they can deploy at a moment's notice in order to take out and deter other people from doing the same. Now, one of the things that theorists actually think of when nuclear armament is done, which is the MAD theory, the assured mutual destruction theory, is that if people get military weapons, then they're less likely to use them, but they're more likely to engage in other kinds of activity, whether it being military, for example, spying, raising and funding insurgent groups, and that sort of thing, or direct confrontation, because if things go south, they can always push the button and destroy the other country. So Israel, being Israel, doing this military buildup is actually not that bizarre, but I just don't know. I don't know if Israel is actually under threat from Iran. There's this weird thing among evangelicals, especially, where they think that if Iran attacks Israel, then it's actually good because they'll help summon Jesus or something. It's very weird. The Left Behind series to a lot of these people is prophecy, so they actually want that to happen, but not. It's bizarre. But with this, the Israeli government is going to be building up its military in order to counteract probably a more aggressive Iran. Now, with that, when the U.S. pulled out of the Iranian nuclear agreement, it kind of gave them the green light to go and do this. The moderates in Iran were actually gaining power under this agreement because it showed that the U.S. could be trusted, because it agreed to this and it was following it. As soon as Trump won election and got rid of the agreement on the U.S. side, it showed that the ultra-conservatives, the hardliners, were actually the ones that were correct. And that makes sense. If you renege on a deal that you had set up that was actually very well maintained and people were being invested, there was investigations, they were spot inspections and that sort of thing. If you renege on this deal and then you reimpose sanctions or additional sanctions, then they don't have any reason to follow the program. And if anything, they should work to get a bomb to make those things less likely to happen, at least in their eyes. Or if it does happen, at least more likely to be able to follow through on things, and have that giant stick. Israel is a military colony. Yeah, I'm actually going to be talking to Quibbles Over Coffee about Israel after the news roundup. Probably take a break for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll be back. I have to walk my dogs in about 30 minutes, and it takes about 30 minutes to walk them. I'm going to give them a nice long walk at night, but we'll be talking about that after I'm back. So, but yeah, so it does make sense that Israel would build this up. It makes sense that Iran would want to counter the sanctions and everything by saying, well, if you're not going to follow your deal, we're not going to follow ours, and we're just going to rush to the bomb. And that's what's going on. So yeah, That is military news from Iran and politics from Iran and Israel. What else do we got on the news today? Well, I think we should have a fun little story before I get into voting rights. We're going to talk about... So, as people may know, free fucking Britney. I can't stress this enough. Like, all those people, all those Britney fanatics back in, the mid 2000s were 100% correct. She is a slave for us, as the song goes, because she is under a conservatorship that is basically controls every aspect of her life, and probably led her to do the crazy quote-unquote things that she did due to the stress and the inability to manage her own affairs, building the pressure, and the pressure of stardom in general came crashing down on her to do these things. Now, as what happened last week, Britney has actually gotten the ability to pick her own lawyer. She's picked a very well-qualified lawyer for that has represented other actors and actresses, musicians, and Hollywood elites for various things, from Sean Penn to others. And it's actually making strange bedfellows. From Ted Cruz to Elizabeth Warren, there's a bipartisan push to free Britney. While partisan gridlock has become a staple in Washington, D.C., there is an issue uniting lawmakers on both sides of the aisle: pop star Britney Spears' legal battle against her conservatorship. From progressive Elizabeth Warren to conservative Senator Ted Cruz, lawmakers with vastly different political philosophy have shared their support for Spears. Spears' conservatorship arrangement dates back to 2008, following her mental health crisis, has enabled her father, Jamie Spears, to exert control over her personal decisions, as well as her estimated $60 million fortune. Conservatorship, also known as guardianship, is a legal mechanism set up for people who the court deems unable to manage their own affairs. Many people describe being under guardianship like a civil death. You cease to exist as a legal person, and somebody else is able to make a decision for you, the co-director of Disability and Civil Rights Clinic at Brooklyn Law School said. In a leaked audio recording of her call in June to Los Angeles Superior Court, Spears alleged that she has been exploited, bullied, and abused during the 13-year conservatorship. The people who did that to me should not be able to walk away so easily, Spears said. In February, the New York Times released Framing Britney Spears, a documentary to highlight Spears' career, tabloid exploitation, and mental health struggles that led to conservatorship. The documentary renewed calls to free Britney, with fans arguing Spears' continued work, releasing albums, performing, and judging the X Factor, prove her ability to manage her own personal and professional affairs. The film also prompted lawmakers from across the ideological spectrum to issue support for the star. Cruz has expressed support for Spears, saying he's squarely and unequivocally in the camp of free Britney. I think that this is a freaking ridiculous what is happening to Britney Spears, and it needs to end, he said on the podcast Verdict with Ted Cruz. True, I actually agree with Ted Cruz on something. Free Britney. Free Britney. Democratic Senator Warren and Bob Casey of Pennsylvania sent a letter earlier this month to Attorney General Merrick Garland and Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra, asking for the data on the conservatorship and guardianship arrangements. Ms. Spears' case has shined a light on long-standing concerns from advocates who have underscored the potential for financial and civil rights abuses of individuals placed under guardianship or conservatorship, typically older Americans and Americans with intellectual, developmental, and mental health disabilities, the letter reads. Despite these concerns, comprehensive data regarding guardianship, referred to as conservatorship in some states, in the United States are substantially lacking, hindering policymakers and advocates' efforts to understand gaps and abuses in the system and address them. Now, this is a very, very important thing to go over. The conservatorship, guardianship is 100% needed thing from a legal perspective. Some people might know that I have a very my younger brother Tim is autistic and on very low on the autism spectrum. He is 33, but he's probably got the mentality of a 18-year-old tops. nonverbal. Does the whole rocking thing, and like he hits paper. He's very into like dogs and stuff like that, but he could not take care of himself legally. Assigning a conservator or a guardian to him is 100% necessary in order to manage his affairs and ensure that he is taken care of. Now, on the other hand, if you have, in Brittany's case, a maybe minor mental breakdown, and then a person willing to exploit that for their own gain, potentially, and I'm not saying this happened, this is speculation, this is opinion, this is a maybe happened thing, don't sue me, bribing a judge with some of that cheddar that you're going to get from the conservatorship, because you get paid to manage the conservatorship if you're doing it if the state deems it to be. And if you're managing the money, well, you're managing the money. It's ripe for abuse, and it has been abused often. Even in cases with people like my brother Tim, there have been instances of malnourishment, of not taken care of, like making sure they're clothed properly, replacing clothes as needed, enough food, that sort of thing, and taking anything that they can from that and pocketing the money themselves. So the fact that data is not collected on these things, of complaints, of legal issues, and that sort of thing, is actually very troubling, and it's something that should 100% be solved. So that is a very crucial point. Let's go ahead and finish the article. I don't think we'll have a full sense of the actions the federal government should take until we have the data. Said, like any area of public policy, your decision in most instances will only be as good as your data. Back in March, the top Republican of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, and Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida, sent a letter to Chairman Jerry Nadler, Democrat, New York, requesting a hearing on conservationships use pegged to Spears' case. In recent years, there has been a growing public concern about the use of conservatorships to effectively deprive individuals of personal freedom at the behest of others through manipulation of the courts, the letter read, later noting that the most striking example, such as abuse, is Spears. Gaetz, who is under investigation over possible sexual misconduct, has been one of Spears' most vocal defenders on Capitol Hill, linking the gripe conservatorships can exert on linking the grip of conservatorship exert on someone's life to slavery in an interview with OAN. He's not wrong. Wow, that's two. That's two today. Agreeing with two piece of shit Republicans. It is hell hath doth froze over, folks. We have agreement with big idiots. But hey, when you're right? So gotta give credit to Matt Gaetz for saying the right thing. In a recent House Judiciary Committee markup, Gaetz reiterated his call to hold a hearing on conservatorship, and that the very first witness should be Britney Spears. Despite support for Spears on both sides of the aisle, preliminary actions from lawmakers don't indicate any eagerness to work together on the issue. Gaetz, along with 3 other House Republicans, sent a letter to Spears on June 30th, inviting her to testify before Congress. No Democrats were listed. So they're trying to score political points. Got it. Yeah, of course they are. Casey said he's interested in working with anyone on this, noting the best chance for legislative success is a process with bipartisan and bicameral support. Both houses of the legislature. Pennsylvania Democrat noted there is already a bipartisan precedent for this issue, citing a 2019 effort with Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine to introduce the Guardianship Accountability Act, which would open more funding to state courts to improve their oversight of guardianship systems and create a national online resource center to distribute data and resources. Another aspect of Pierce's testimony that elicited strong reactions from lawmakers was her allegation that she's prevented by her conservatorship from removing her IUD, a birth control device, in order to have a baby. It's insane you can force a woman to basically sterilize herself under a guise of protection, tweeted Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina. The number 4 House Democrat, Representative Kathleen Clark, agreed, tweeting, "Everyone deserves control over their own body, period." Brooklyn Law Schools near told NPR that Spears' claim that she's not able to remove her IUD is unfortunately not surprising, noting that many of her clients at the Disability and Civil Rights Clinic find themselves in the position where their guardians are making healthcare decisions that they do not agree with. A guardian can really exercise so much control over your life that you are unable to make those very intimate decisions about yourself, she said. Spears' conservatorship case is ongoing, with another hearing scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. So this was done on Tuesday. So yeah, that I'm not going to read the whole article. I think that wraps it up pretty well. So yeah, as I said, the Spears case is one of those things where, you know, maybe when we were a little younger we made fun of because, you know, she's like a pop star, and you know what, how could her life be so cruel? She's a star, but she cries with a lonely heart. See, she was telling us the whole time, people. All her songs, like, I feel bad because I didn't believe it. Like, I mean, not that I didn't believe it. Of course, when it came out, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like, yeah, the whole time singing about it, singing about her misery and everything like that. And here, I'm sure most of us not Britney Spears fanatics thought that it was just a song written by, you know, somebody else that was about things that they might be feeling or whatever, not what Spears herself was feeling. And yeah, so the Leave Britney Alone crowd was absolutely positively 100% correct about it, and I feel bad for not listening to them more. So yeah. So if you want to share your thoughts, go ahead and comment below on the YouTube video. Hit me up on Twitter. Again, your Twitter is this link that's going to come up here, at least on, I think it's only going to come up on yeah, I think it's only coming up on Streamlabs. The Twitter links are like up here, I think. So there you can find them in the links up there, but there's the link for your convenience. Talk about a little bit of everything on Twitter, as much as 255 characters can do. And yeah, just let me know what your thoughts are about that. Oh, wait. There is one more topic that I want to cover. And this topic is near and dear to my heart because I live in Texas. Now, what some people may be aware of is that Texas is currently trying to pass sweeping voting laws, preventing things like 24-hour, where do we go for beard maintenance tips? North Countryman. Honestly, this I discovered myself. One day I just decided that I was going to trim. I let my beard grow probably maybe about that much, and then I trimmed it. The trimming didn't come out very well, and I found out that it's thicker here where the goatee would be than it is on the, damn it, there we go. It is on the sides here. So I do actually just trim this here at a lower value with you know, I think it's 1/4 trim here, and the rest of it's 3/8, and it's well maintained that way. I need to look up actual beard care stuff because I don't like the crook of my mouth, and there's like some, you know, general stuff with it. But yeah, that's how I maintain this kind of length. Just trim it once every other week or so. Yeah. But okay, so got distracted with that. But yes, so as people might be aware, I live in Texas. I'm actually in Austin. If you're in the Texas area, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter. I'm the one that primarily runs the Twitter account, so you can we should get together. Like, I'm going to be at Tribune Fest this year. Should be a good time. So yeah, if you want to do that, I'm more than welcome to meet people online, offline in real life, because I like to touch grass. So, but Texas is trying to pass a slew of anti-voting laws in the state, and Democrats have actually fled the state in order to prevent quorum in order to make the vote not be allowed to happen. I think it's 10 or 12 legislators have fled the state, and they are currently actually in DC in order to talk to Joe Manchin about the Voting Rights Act that was trying to be pushed through Congress under Democratic leadership. Now, with the okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and actually pull up the Texas Tribune. Texas Tribune is a fantastic local newspaper. It covers all things Texas. It is a nonprofit news organization. Again, they host the Texas Tribune Fest every year. They even did it last year during the pandemic, but they did it virtually. It was great. You can find a lot of good talks with high-ranking officials and authors and a whole bunch of things. Like, it's a fantastic paper. I absolutely love them. So they cover things very, very well in Texas and nationally as it relates to Texas. So definitely check them out. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to read some of the things that are coming. And some of these things, maybe you might be like, oh, that's okay. And that's fine, because some of the changes are actually like, well, I mean, it makes voting harder, which sucks, but it's not like necessarily racist per se kind of thing in there. So we're going to head and read that together. So let's go here and I'll a bit. Let's do that more. There we go. That should be good to. All right. So a ban on drive-through voting is one of the things that is happening. The reason that this is being done is because drive-through voting was very successful in Harris County. Harris County includes Houston, and this is where people get the whole it's racist thing. For this particular section of law is that Houston is predominantly black and brown, large Democratic city, and it was very successful. They used it to, as states here, used it to 10 drive-through polling places for the November general election, and Republicans were very against this because you could cheat somehow. I don't know, like you still had to give them your ID, still had it checked to make sure nobody voted under your name. What are they gonna do? Like, people are gonna walk from the voting tally thing and not take it? Like, it's bizarre that anybody thought that this is a bad thing, especially if it encouraged more people to vote, especially during a pandemic. So this is one of the things that they're trying to do. They're going to ban this practice because reasons. They want to make it harder to vote. That's one thing. Another thing that is happening is that they're going to new regulations for early voting, including a ban on 24-hour voting. So both bills, so these are two bills that have to come together and be reconciled, much like a lot of bills from, there was a bill that was attempted to be passed, done under the regular legislative session. Democrats walked out on the 11th, literally the 11th hour. There was 11 hours left in the session. They were they were trying to get voting rights. Democrats walked out and didn't come back, quashing the bill because it was the last thing that they heard, and the session ended prior to reaching quorum, prior to a vote being not. And now they're trying to go above and beyond that bill with additional things. So one of the things that they're trying to do is ban 24-hour voting. This was also fairly successful within Texas. This allowed people that worked odd hours to vote at their convenience and that sort of thing. Now, while that's said, the bill adds an extra hour of required early voting hours for local elections, moving it from 8 hours to 9. And both bills lower the population threshold for counties required to provide at least 12 hours of early voting each weekday of the second week of early voting in a state elections. So this is a kind of give and take. We're gonna take away 24-hour voting, but expand it to 9 hours of early voting, and at least require 12 hours of early voting on the second week. You know, it's one of those things like, well, we're trying to do the right thing, right? So this ain't be all bad. Sure, like I can kind of get what their point is, but I don't see why having 24-hour polling places is a bad thing. If the local election boards are willing to pay for it and they're willing to do it, it doesn't come out of the state budget, that at least is some legitimate complaint that could come from this. I don't see why they would want to get rid of this, other than because it was popular and it made it easier for people to vote. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Republicans think that if it's easier to vote, or it's going to hurt them, I guess. I don't know. It's very bizarre to me. Okay, so as expected, the House and Senate both retreated from a controversial proposal to restrict the start time for Sunday early voting, which was derided as an attack on souls to the polls. another thing that was tried to pass. That I can't help but to think that they like purposely put this in there to be like, oh, we didn't think that that was an issue, so we're going to listen to our constituents and pull that back in order to try to get out of being called racist or whatever. I can't help but to think that because these people are shrewd. But they got rid of it, and yet still Democrats and liberals still act like that's in there, and it's not. So that's one of the things. Instead, both chambers are applying their new window of voting to weekend hours and adding an extra hour of required voting hours, moving it from 5 to 6 hours. A ban on the distribution of mail-in ballots. So this is one of those things where you're not going to be able to send out preemptively mail-in ballots. Republicans believe that if you send out mail-in ballots to anybody that doesn't ask for it, then you're going to encourage people to vote fake votes, or like, oh, I don't really vote, so you can vote for me, person that gives me $30 or something. Like, that's their thinking. That is the reasonable thinking behind it. And I could kind of see that if there wasn't other things in place to prevent that from happening, like, for example, checking voter databases to make sure somebody didn't vote twice, which is something that's already being done. But to me, this isn't that big of a deal, because if you want to vote, like, I want to make voting as easy as possible. I think there should be automatic voter registration. There should be I'm gonna actually, so you can see me better. There should be automatic voter registration. There should be voting day should be a federal holiday. You should be able to vote early for a month. You should be able to request absentee ballots for any reason. Like, these things are things that I think should happen. But sending out a voter card or a vote by mail without being solicited can potentially open up for those things to happen. And so it's not that big of a deal to me if this is blocked. It's the other requirements that are being iffy. They're not only reducing the amount of time to request a ballot for mail-in ballot, but they're also making the reasons for requesting a mail-in ballot more stringent, and they're requiring a new idea for voting by mail. Now, I don't see how you can fucking do this, but hey, I'm gonna go ahead and read this word for word about what's being reported by the Texas Tribune here. So both the House and Senate are proposing to alter the rules used to verify applications to vote by mail and return ballots. This bill would set a new ID requirement, so voters must provide their driver's license number, or if they don't have one, the last 4 digits of the Social Security number on applications for those ballots. For their votes to be counted, voters will be required to include matching information on the envelopes used to return their ballot. Those requirements were added behind closed doors to the final version of the failed voting legislation during the regular session and haven't been widely debated. The language comes from the Senate from separate Republican bills that failed to pass in the spring. Now, so they're going to make it to where you have to write it on the envelope. Never mind that. So you have to write it on the envelope. So if there's some person that wants to not count a vote, they could like squiggle it and be like, oh, look, this vote's not counted. So that opens up bullshit for that. You could easily, like, you could make it to where they're logged in a data. Like, this is one of those things. Like, they could make it to where you have to show your ID to get it. And then once you show your ID to get it, it gets mailed to you and it's pinned to your ID, your driver's license number. And if it's not, and if somebody else tries to vote with it, they'll like, you need like some sort of matching. This is something they could do. They could like, okay, you have to show your ID that you are who you say you are before you can get a mail-in ballot. Like, that's one of the things I'm willing to give them. But all this other stuff just allows for people to question if the vote is legitimate or not when there's recounts. And we all know that's what they're doing, right? They're pushing for these kind of recounts to happen. And it's bullshit. It's just to make it to where there is more questions about the legitimacy of voting. So rather than do the writing on the envelope and all these other convoluted shit, when you send in you just send in 2 pieces of information. like you do with your credit card. You get your credit card, and then you get your new, not credit card, you get your debit card, and then a week later you get your like PIN for your new debit card, right? They can do the same thing for a mail-in ballot. They can send in the mail-in ballot, and they're like, you will get a 5, 10, 20-digit code that is linked to this. In order for your vote to be valid, you must put this code in this block. And that could eliminate the whole people fake voting thing, right? Like, I feel like that is better use of it. Thank you for the follow, Fomio. Appreciate it. Formio. Thank you. So yeah, I think that that's one of the things that they could do. I think this is just to this particular part of the law is being done just to question the integrity of voting when they do audits. Another thing that they can bring up. The correction process for mail-in ballots is another thing that's coming up, where this is a concession to Democrats given to, but like, hey, we gave you something, you should support this now, right? Basically being able to language to create a new correction process for mail-in ballots that are ordinarily rejected because of missing signature or an endorsement a local review board determines does not belong to the voter who returned the ballot. So kind of those things like, rather than just discounting the ballot entirely, this is a good change. This would be sending out a mailer or calling the voter or whatever mechanism they determine. Be like, hey, your vote is potentially not count. Please come and correct it, or send in this paper to correct your vote or verify your vote. Perfectly fine. Nothing about that. And this is another very weird thing here. They're also going to check the voting registration for citizenship. They are for whatever reason, they think that just like people that aren't citizens of the US are just voting in mass and like risking federal prison time, deportation, and all this other stuff just to vote in the US elections. Given our system is crap, like no. People aren't doing this. This is not a thing that's actually happening. Stop it. Stop trying to say that this is happening. It's not happening. There's no evidence that it does happen. The little bit of evidence that we do of when it does happen, whatever, if it's a person that's not a citizen voting or a person voting twice or whatever, it has not been done at a level that can swing elections. So this whole thing about like checking for citizenship checks is just another way to bring in the question of the integrity of the elections to muddy the waters. If they really, really cared about this, they should make the process automatic. I can't stress this enough. The more the process is automatic, the less likelihood there is to make mistakes, the less likelihood there is to be foul play, because you're making voter registration automatic. You're making it happen when a person changes their address. You're making it happen when they turn 18. You're making it happen when they get their license for the first time. Whatever. An automatic voter registration eliminates this stuff. It entirely eliminates it, and it's cheaper. It's cheaper to do this. But because, again, for some reason, Republicans think that if more people vote, they're going to get voted out of office. God knows why they think that they're against things like that. And it's so frustrating that like this is something that Democrats should be putting in in every single state in the country. Automatic voter registration. Do it, please. That is from this section of this cast, this news roundup. That is my ask for all of you. Petition your local representative and on your state level to make voter registration automatic. Please do it. It eliminates so much of these problems. It really does, and it's the easiest way to get more people to vote, to eliminate the need to renew registrations, everything. It's the easiest thing to do. It is really easy. It can be done. Please do it. All right, what else is in this thing? So HB 3 includes language in response to a controversial illegal voting conviction of Crystal Mason, a Tarrant County woman facing a 5-year prison sentence for casting a provisional ballot in 2016. Democrats pushed to add the language to the voting legislation during the regular session. Mason was on supervised release for a federal conviction at the time and said she didn't know that made her ineligible to vote. HB3 would require judges to inform someone if a conviction will prohibit them from voting and require proof beyond a provisional ballot for an attempt to cast an illegal vote to count as a crime. So in other words, this woman got slammed for like 6-7 years in prison, federal crime for this illegal vote. They was all over conservative media, but like, look, these people are trying to vote and steal your vote and blah 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 blah, and all that stuff. And this is a good change. Everybody should be aware of their rights, especially when they're released from prison early. That they need to know this. If she legitimately didn't know, most people don't know about these things. They think if they're released from prison, they're good to go. And there's no reason why that should be as highly of a federal crime as it is. And doing this will make it easier to make sure that people know. Now, there's also this poll watcher protection, and poll watchers are partisan in the state of Texas. So both bills include language to strengthen the autonomy of partisan poll watchers at polling places by granting them free movement within a polling place, except for being present at a voting station when a voter is filling out their ballot. Both chambers also want to make it a criminal offense to obstruct their view or distance the watcher in a manner that would make observation not reasonably effective. Currently, poll watchers are entitled to sit or stand conveniently near election workers, and it is a criminal offense to prevent them from observing. What does this mean? This means it opens up to intimidation. It opens up more partisanship in the voting process, in the direct process of voting. The whole reason we have secret ballots is because people were being bribed, and otherwise accosted for their vote. It was public knowledge of everybody who vote for, so you could get fired from a job if you didn't vote the way the boss wanted you to vote and everything like that. This kind of change to the voting process makes it more, not only does it make it more partisan and more likely to have fuck games being done with voting, but it also increases the intimidation factor of voting, and this is something that absolutely should not be done. You observing a person voting, a person in the ballot box voting, is not going to prevent voter fraud. It's not, because that's not how voter fraud works. People are not going to, like, once you're voting, you're already, if you're committing fraud, you're already there. You're not, all it's going to do is, like, that person over there doesn't look like that they are who they say they are. I don't know them, so I think that they are an illegal citizen, an illegal alien of these United States, and I don't think that they should vote. That's the kind of bullshit that's going to happen from this. 100% guaranteed that is what's going to happen here. So this is another thing that just shouldn't be done. I don't like, when it comes to the counting of ballots, I think there could be reasonable things done to allow poll watchers and volunteers to, like, have more look at the process. Maybe if it actually leads to people having more faith in the election process, do it. I don't think it does. I think it's just increased, especially with partisanship. It just increases the partisanship of the country, and it brings into question the voting that's done, and that sort of thing. And I don't think that it actually helps. And so the utility of it is questionable at best. But that is not the same thing as this. And so if they wanted to do something like that, maybe they could get away. They could do it. All right, I want to read this comment that just came in. I heard an interview where they said that they fled Texas because there was the worry that the proposed bill will be amended last minute and then they can be prevented from leaving and breaking quorum at that point. Yes, that is also true. That's why they left. The reason they left and broke quorum in the first place in the regular legislative session is because that was what had happened, and Abbott has already said that he would issue arrest warrants and that sort of thing to prevent people from leaving, so they left early to avoid that. Now, one of the things that I didn't really talk about this is that these Democratic lawmakers from the state of Texas are actually meeting with Joe Manchin in order to convince him to support the For the People Act. Rather than the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And the reason being is that the For the People Act is much more robust. It would prevent the fuckery that's happening in Texas, because this is fuckery. Don't get it twisted. I don't care what you think about illegal voting or anything like that. this is going too far to prevent that. This is injecting partisanship into it where it doesn't need to be. And so to prevent that, and with the Republicans reneging on their promise to Joe Manchin to support the John Lewis Voting Act, they believe that if they can bring their personal stories to Joe Manchin, they could probably have some sway on him to get him to support the For People Act and potentially reform the filibuster, which is preventing these things from happening. Now, on the filibuster front, Joe Manchin has previously stated in interviews with Axios that he is willing to lower the threshold from 60 to 55, from requiring the Senate to be fully in session during a filibuster, to require the Sergeant of Arms to lock people in so that he can't leave during a filibuster, or, you know, maybe like follow them to the bathroom or whatever, as if they're trying to leave for that sort of thing. So it actually increases the amount of cost to filibuster. Those are things that I would support as well. If this group of Texas Democrats can convince Joe Manchin to support these things and get it through the Senate on just a 51 vote, do it. Please let it be done. So yes, let it be done, please. So yeah, that is that. So actually that wraps up the news roundup. Been streaming for about 2 hours and 14 minutes now. Oh, we got another comment in here. No nonsense. Let's see. Also, what would happen to ensure poll worker safety in the next crisis, health or political or general unruliness? Exactly. Like if you're having partisans in there, and they think stealing the election, what's to stop these people that are just there with no knowledge of anything from like enacting violence to save the election? Nothing, other than maybe a good guy with a gun. It is Texas, so maybe the good guy with the gun would actually be a bad guy with a gun. Oh, but yeah, so yeah, good comment. That is a good closing comment there. No nonsense. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So thank you all so much, everybody, for joining me on the news roundup today. It was a pleasure sharing my thoughts, opinions about the news and informing you all about the news of the week with my kind of analysis, and analysis only the crowd can provide. I know you liked what you heard because you stayed with me all the way to the end. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that followed and everything like that. Greatly appreciate it. If you like what you heard, go ahead and hit that follow button. It really does help us out, helps us with the algorithms. Go ahead and do it on YouTube as well. Definitely do it on YouTube. We're going to be posting most stuff on there and everything like that. Want to give another shout out to Nikki Adams. She is one of the people that helped me put together the news roundups and has been a great asset to the cast as a researcher and gatherer of notes for us and for myself to make these as entertaining as possible with videos and memes and that sort of thing. And we will be sure to share more of those going forward. So big shout out to Nikki. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. And then also another shout out for the charity stream. Please be remembered that the charity stream will be happening July 31st to August 1st, 11 a.m. to 11 a.m. We're going to have a whole host of big name big name Twitch political streamers on the program for y'all in a hopefully entertaining fashion, where I will be participating in at least one of them and moderating another one. There's going to be there's 3 debate panels, 2 debate panels featuring some of the biggest names in Twitch, and 1 debate panel is an open debate late at night on Saturday into Sunday morning. It's going to be a whole host of things that we're going to do. We're raising money for great charities. We're raising money for gonna have to look at it again. So raising money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Austin Pets Alive, and the Bob Woodruff Foundation. The money isn't going to be coming to us at all. For this one, it is going directly to the charities through Tiltify, and so we'll be sharing the links for that. We're going to raise as much money as we can during the first 24 hours, and then throughout the month, we're going to also continue raising money. Assuming we hit those goals, we'll just raise them up a bit to increase the amount of money that we're raising for these great charities, and hopefully be able to do some good with this program. So yeah, thank you again, everybody, so much for joining us. Stick around. I am going to go ahead and raid a streamer that is live right now who I like. Let me go ahead and find out who is streaming, and so stick around for that. We will be rating them. And as always, keep your head up through the political storm.